All your school rugby, all in one place. This is Next Gen 50.
Alright guys, welcome to Next Gen 15, and in today's video we're going to be doing a deep dive into the FNB Varsity Cup of 2022. So if you are new to our channel, please don't forget to click that subscribe button as well as bell notification, and as soon as new videos are released you'll be the first to know. Another thing guys, whether it's the like button or the dislike button, please just smash it. Doesn't matter which one. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm, so just click like or dislike. Whatever your instincts tells you, that would actually give us a big help in boosting us, as I said, with the YouTube algorithm. So if you could just go ahead and do that, we'd greatly appreciate that. So let's get into the video. So in last year's prediction, I was off, and I mean way off. So it seems that I've got a lot to learn about varsity rugby, and it's very dynamic, which makes it interesting, very similar to school rugby. But most of my knowledge is with school rugby, so it was always going to be tough, but I didn't think it would be this tough and I'd be that wrong. And like I always say, I admit to being wrong, and I've got no problem with being wrong. That's what makes rugby such an exciting game, especially these type of competitions, right? So I thought to myself, if I'm going to get it wrong, let's just get it all the way wrong. So I decided upon a points-based system tied to certain KPIs and thought, let's just see how it turns out. Is there an algorithm or is there a calculation that can predetermine the outcome in terms of a ladder? But first, let's just take a look at last year's predictions so you can see how off I was. I mean, look, I got Marties and TUKS facing each other in the semi-finals. I got that right. And I don't really deserve a pat on the back. Even though 2 out of 4 is 50%, you definitely don't deserve a pat on the back, because essentially Marties and TUKS are always going to be there, right? And then the UCT versus NWU game, that was the other semi. I predicted Wits versus UJ. And they finished 8th and 9th in the log. So that was a shocker. So then I thought that the semi would be between Marties and Wits. It was actually between TUKS and UCT. And UCT really surprised me. Played some great rugby last year. And then I predicted the winner to be Wits. I just looked at the quality in their squad and some of the players, and maybe it was just that I recognized a lot of those players, but I just thought with the leadership, with the coaching, with everything, they had all the right ingredients were there. But I was ultimately wrong, and TUKS actually took the trophy. Definitely deserved it. Came through when it when it mattered most. I think UCT will be quite disappointed. I think they were the favourites for that final, but c'est la vie, life does go on. So basically, in terms of the points-based system, so the performance areas that I'm looking at are players, coaching, and team, right? So in terms of players, school attended, the origin of the player, as well as the experience. In terms of coaching, again, we look at experience, we look at tenure, and then we look at coaching level. And in terms of the team dynamic, we look at the 2021 performance. We're going to take a look at the table history as well as the cup history. So in terms of players, school attended. Now, is pedigree important? Does it matter whether the player hails from a powerhouse school or not? And the rankings in terms of the top 20 are based on schoolboyrugby.co.za's list. It's going to be available on one of the latest slides. You'll be able to pause that to basically see it. But essentially, in terms of the scoring, if the guy went to a top 5 school, he gets 5 points. 6 to 10, he gets 4 points, and on it goes. Next up, origin. Does it matter if the player was recruited from the local catchment area? Does familiarity of surroundings assist the players? So if the player is locally based, in other words, like let's say he's going to Wits and he matriculated within the Lions region, then he's considered local, for example. That's the catchment area, so you get 2 points. Sharks, Limpopo, and Pumas, I gave 1.5 points each, because if you take a look at those unions, there's no real catchment area. Yeah, you might argue that the Bulls and Limpopo, but I mean, at the same time, you could probably, argue that if you're going to give it to the Bulls, why don't you give it to the Lions, for example? So I don't want to get into that whole debate. So basically, anyone from those 3 unions basically gets 1.5 points, and if they're outside the catchment area, then it's 1 point. Then in terms of experience, do returning players make a massive difference, or is it new blood that can make the difference? So basically, if it's a returning player, 2 points are assigned. If it's a new player, 1 point is assigned. So basically what I do then is I add up all the points and then divide it by the amount of squad members. So let's say there's 100 points and there are 30 squad members. That'll basically be, 3.3 or whatever. And then I multiply it by 100, so that would be like 330, for example, right? Because, look, essentially, there's some squads that have like 40 players, and there's some squads that only have 32 players listed. So that's why we basically go on an average when we do the points allocations. Coaching. So first performance indicator was continuity. That was listed as experience before. So basically, how important is continuity? I mean, naturally, chopping and changing is not ideal, but how big is the gap? So basically, if it's a returning coach, there's 20 points. If there's a new coach, there's 10 points. Then tenure. Now, if continuity is important, then how important is tenure? Is a coach's tenure linked to the performance, or do new ideas sometimes need to come in? So basically, what happens in this regard is that there's 5 points per year the coaches are at the team. And then coaching level, does the highest level of coaching experience make a difference, or is the Varsity Cup a breeding ground for new ideas? So if the guy was a franchise head, 5 points, Curry Cup head, 4 points, franchise assistant, 3 points, Curry Cup assistant, 2 points. And if they've only ever coached at Varsity Cup level or club level, then it's just 1 point. And then finally, the team dynamic. Okay, so first we look at table history, and we're back to pedigree. Here we're basically looking at a team's performance in terms of overall table history. So what I did here was I looked at the total historical points since inception, then divided it by the years competed in the Varsity Cup. Okay, so basically, if they got 100 points and they competed in 10 Varsity Cups, then it's 10 points. Okay. And then we look at, we take those average annual points and we multiply it by 100. So if it was 10 average points per year, then obviously it's it's 100 times 10. Okay, just for example. 10 times 100. My apologies. I did go to university. In case anyone's wondering. So yeah, that'll be 10 times 10 times 100 or whatever. So yeah, then we look at the 2021 performance. So how important is recent success? So we base this on the final table positions in the 2021 competition. So in other words, if they finish first on the log, 100 points, second 90 points, third 80 points, and on it goes, fourth 70, fifth 60, etc. Then cup history. So now it's one thing to make the playoffs, but can a team go all the way, or does the pressure get to them? So if they've won the competition, 5 points. If they finish runners-up, 3 points. And if they've made the playoffs, 1 point. Okay. So basically, in terms of all these calculations and all the rest of it, guys, it was just a way for me to try and take complete emotion out of it and try and do a ranking system based on that and what the top 10 of the log would ultimately look like. Then I'll give my thoughts on the final 4 and how I think the playoffs will play out. And then we'll see basically what the results are, and then maybe we can see if we can chop and change, some point allocations, etc. It's not a perfect science. I just didn't want to do a prediction that I did like I did last year, and be completely off. So I thought to myself, like, let's experiment here. I mean, after all, guys, this channel is about fun. We try and cover the fun and the interesting aspects of rugby. So don't take this too seriously. So according to the historical top 20, here we go, schoolboyrugby.co.za. If you want, you can press pause. I'm not going to stay on this too long. But as you can see, top 5 points. The next 6 to 10, 4, 11 to 15, 3, and then 16 to 20 gets 2. Then anything outside of that top 20 will get 1 point. And again, maybe this is something I need to work on, because even outside the top 20, not all schools are really created equal. And I mean, some varsity suffered a little bit in this regard. But anyway, like I said, it's a bit of fun, not a perfect science. So let's see how this worked out. So according to the calculations, in 10th place, you'd have NMMU, obviously known as the Madibaz, located in Pukke. The catchment area would be the Kings area, so EP border Southwestern districts. Yes, some people would argue maybe SWD belongs in the Western Cape category, but in my opinion, it's a King's catchment area. 28,000 students, no championships yet. They did have a good period during 2013-14 though, where they did make the playoffs. This year, no SA Schools players. In terms of the scoring, they did very well in Origin. There was a lot of boys that were from the catchment area, so a lot of guys that are locally based. Then the coach level as well. Their coach has got quite a good pedigree behind him as well. Areas where they lost quite a few points was experience in terms of returning players and all the rest. Obviously, 2021 performance was very disappointing. They finished last on the log. In terms of table history, average points per year, total, like I said, multiplied by 100, right? So it's 90.83, and that kept them in last place. So those are the areas they really suffered in. In terms of the team, this year it's going to be coached by David Manuel. He's previously was an assistant at the Bulls. Heard he's highly rated over there. Definitely taking a very challenging job over here. So I wish him all the best. Arno Null will be captaining the team this year. Player to watch, keep a close eye on Lennox Holster, very exciting player. In terms of the new and returning players, 20 players are new and 16 are returning. So quite a bit of new blood in over there. And, just before anyone starts hating on me for this, just remember I am from the Eastern Cape. I'm a proud Madibaz supporter deep down inside. If someone actually asked me, I haven't lived in the city for, a long time. It was still known as PE back then. But if people even overseas ask me what team I support, I still support EP. I still support the Kings. Eastern Cape boy, born and bred. I'd love to see some investment go into to rugby in the local area, to be honest with you, because there's so much talent with the school level over there. But I think the most thing, and I mean, with the most of the Eastern Cape kids is, bright big city lights and all the rest of it. It sort of, attracts them to newer pastures. But let's see how it works out for them this year. Maybe they can upset the apple cart. I mean, if you think about CUT and UWC last year, I mean, they struck quite a few people. But there definitely will be challenges. I mean, in terms of the competition they'll be facing. Then 9th place CUT, just ahead of NMMU. The nickname is the Ikeys. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. Excuse my Caucasianness if I'm not. Located in Bloemfontein, catchment area, Free State Griquas Griffins, 20,000 students. Haven't won a championship just yet. Last year was a fantastic year for them. Played some dynamic rugby. It was their best finish so far, 5th place. 1 SA Schools player. So in terms of scoring, in terms of like the powerhouse schools, they didn't do too well over there. Also the cup history, I mean, it's still a relatively new program in terms of the Varsity Cup, so they suffered there a little bit. But they've got experience, some decent players coming back, and in terms of the coaching level, that's up there as well. So in terms of the team, it will be coached by Bram van Straten this year. Captain will be Luvuyo Ndevu, who I'm hearing great things about, absolute beast. Charles Williams, definitely a player to watch, very classy fluff, loved watching him last year. I think this is a year where he could definitely have a breakout. Surprised he didn't get a contract, very surprised on that when I take a look at some of the other guys that got offers, but anyway. 27 players that are new, 21 players that are returning. So it will be an interesting dynamic. I think the loss of their coach to Griquas is going to have quite a big impact on them. But Bram has worked in very difficult conditions before. I mean, he worked for EP guys. I mean, that's not easy on anybody, right? Great kicking coach as well. Very underrated players as Springbok. True rugby man. Let's see if he can take over the mantle. Will they finish as high as they did last year? I think it'll be tough, especially when you consider the quality of play that they've lost. But let's see what happens. Okay, next up, 8th place, University of the Western Cape. Don't have a nickname, unless I'm wrong. Based in Cape Town, Western Province, Boland catchment area, 22,000 students. Again, another school that, varsity, that had its best finish last year with 6th place. No SA Schools reps, however. In terms of the scoring, Origin did very well. A lot of locally based players. Coach continuity, tied for first, obviously, with a lot of coaches that are coming back. Coaching level, coach who I mentioned latest coached at the highest level. Just in terms of the areas where they lacked in terms of their points, it was cup history and school. So obviously not recruiting from the powerhouse schools necessarily, and we don't know if that's a good or bad thing yet. That will remain to be seen. Also cup history, they finished 9th. They didn't get any points for that. Obviously haven't made the playoffs yet. Again, a relatively young program. And then obviously table history as well, which should have been marked in red. In terms of the team, Paul True is the coach. Springbok Sevens coach. I mean, that's a pretty high level. I think he's definitely done some great things with the program. I think very underappreciated coach in South African rugby circles. Definitely should have been given more opportunities. The captain will be Lyle Hendricks this year, and the player to watch, Puppe Vokazela. Puppe, we know, has got tons of potential, got quality written all over him. He needs a big year, and I think he'll make the step up this year. I think he understands he needs a big year to stand out in what is definitely a crowded market, which is South African youth rugby. I mean, he's still a youth player, still under 20 as far as I know. So he needs a big year, and I think he'll be someone to watch. New players, 21, returning players, 21. So, yeah, very, very even split over there. Moving on, 7th place, we got Wits. No nickname that I know. Joburg area, Lions Falcons catchment, 40,209 students, 0 championships. Best finish was 4th in 2018 and 1 SA schools rep. In terms of the scoring, coaching is where they scored very highly. In terms of continuity and tenure, Origin wasn't bad as well. Have quite a few locally based players in that squad. Where they did suffer those historical performance. I mean, last year was definitely not up to par. Table history, again, a relatively new program still developing when you take a look at it in a historical context. And then cup history, obviously, as well. They've basically just made the playoffs at one time. So the team, the coach will be Hugo van As, the most experienced man at the Varsity Cup, a very highly rated coach. If I take a look at the players that he had on paper last year, I think he should have done a lot better. I think he'll recognize that himself. He should have done a lot better. I just think the tactics didn't bring the best out of the players that he had. I think there was a bit conservative. I think the center fly, the two centers and fly-off dynamic just wasn't working. They weren't feeding off each other. And when you got Selengbe and Henko van Wyk playing at center, guys, I mean, come on, if you're not tearing down opposition defenses at that stage, you gotta question your tactics. And there wasn't a lot of time to pivot, and they didn't pivot, and I think that suffered. But they still played some fantastic rugby. I think they were very unlucky. I don't think they deserved an 8th place finish. They just some key plays that just weren't performing up to level. But yeah, Coach Hugo van As, highly rated coach. Let's see how he does this year. Hopefully he can get the best out of his squad. Captain will be Ebot Boomer. Very strong, very, very strong guy. Keep an eye on him. Player to watch, definitely Ngias Lengbe. I've spoken about him at length. I really rate this kid. I think he's got a massive future in the game. New players, 25. Returning players will be 24. Moving on, 6th place, UJ. No nickname that I know of. Based in Joburg, Lions Falcons area as well. 51,313 students. No championships. The best finish was 1st, but that was in 2011, and that was a table finish. 0 SA schools players this year, according to our list. In terms of the scoring, the only thing they really did well at here, I mean, everything was pretty much average, but the thing that they did well at was the coach level, which we'll get to. 2021 performance, obviously very disappointing for them, and I think that's why they got a new coach in this year, obviously. But otherwise, just very much middle of the table, which is obviously why they ranked middle of the table in terms of the scoring system, 666.14 points. Captain will be Johannes Terblanche. The player to watch, definitely Caden Kivitt, and then an equal split of new and returning players. So the coach, Jonathan McQuena, a very underrated rugby brain, guys. I think he's definitely gonna add to the UJ program. Again, on paper, I just looked at the team on paper last year, and I thought to myself, on paper, this is a great team. Unfortunately, the coaching staff went up to it, and I don't like to be overly critical, but if Wits got their tactics wrong, I don't even know what to say about last year's, UJ tactics, because on paper there were some fantastic players there. And the scary thing is, I think that on paper, last year's team was certainly stronger than this year's team on paper. But I think Mokoena will definitely get the best out of this year's group. They've got some strong leaders over there. They've got some strong players over there. They've got a good foundation. And I think in Jonathan Mokoena, they've definitely got a very underrated rugby brain. So let's see how he gets on. So, 5th place, University of the Free State, nicknamed the Shimlas, located in Bloem. So, the catchment areas of the Free State, Griquas, and Griffins regions. 37,000 students, 1 championship, best finish 2015 first, and 1 SA Schools player. So in terms of scoring, school, they did very well. Obviously, being based in the Free State, they got a lot of great college players, which helped them a lot. Experience, they came in 2nd, and the coaching level, they came in 3rd. So those were the dynamics in which they scored pretty highly. Obviously, very disappointed by their 2021 performance. I think they definitely would have expected more, especially with the program with this much prestige and history. But besides that, pretty much average on all other aspects. In terms of the team, very excited to see Andre Trudeau coaching UFS this year. I think he's definitely going to add a new dynamic to the team over there. Even though Nelson Mandela finished last place last year, I don't think they were a badly coached team. I just don't think that there was enough talent on the pitch and enough investment into the rugby program there, with all respect. And like I say, I'm saying this as a PE/Quebecer boy, right? So I don't think it was that. I think CUT's performance was down to exceptional coaching. And I don't think NMMU's downfall was their coaching. I just think, and I have to be honest, I just think there was just a lack of talent there overall. They had some great, they had some individual players that showed talent, moments of brilliance, but overall there just wasn't that talent and depth that's needed to compete in a competition like this. So Tabang Mahlasi is going to be the captain, big boy. Keep a close eye on him. You won't be able to miss him on the field. Player to watch, definitely keep an eye on Chams Ondeki. New players 21 and returning players will be 26. Obviously that gave them the very big score and experience. They finished 2nd in the experience category. So yeah, it'll be an interesting dynamic. I even think personally, taking aside the point system, that there's every possibility that this is a team that could finish into the semi-finals if the ball bounces the right way for them. So I think they're real dark horses for the forthcoming season. Then 4th, UCT, nickname Ikeys, located in Cape Town, Western Province, Boland catchment area, 28,700 students, 2 championships, 2011, 2014, 2 SA Schools players this year. In terms of the scoring, school, they scored pretty low, 8th. Again, I think next year I'm going to have to relook at it, because they've got a lot of southern suburbs boys. And I mean, those schools are very good rugby schools. Maybe they're not top 20 programs year after year, but there's still some pretty good programs over there, right? So I still think I should have maybe relook at the point structuring system in the future on there. But let's see how that works out regardless. Origin, they finished 3rd. In experience, they finished tied 3rd. Origin, obviously a lot of boys from the local area. Continuity, tied 1st. Dawson Squibb still there. Tenure finished 4th. So the 2021 performance, obviously they finished 1st on the table last year, so that's what got them a nice high rank in there. In terms of cup history, they ranked equal 3rd, giving them a grand total of 848.74 points. So obviously the team, Tom Dawson Squibb, very underrated coach, completely made me swallow my words last year. I thought it might be a bit early for UCT. I mentioned in the video last year, but I mean, they played some fantastic rugby. Player to watch, Ikeys, a lot of pace. This will be his last year. Definitely will be up there in the try scoring charts, because UCT love playing that Western Cape style rugby, very open, expansive. 20 new players and 22 returning players. So very interesting dynamic there as well. A lot of work on his hand, lost a lot of key players, as you do in the Varsity Cup. 3rd place, Northwest University, nicknamed the Eagles, based in Potchefstroom. Catchment areas are Leopards, 73,000 students, 1 championship, so that was their best finish in 2016. In terms of the scoring, they finished last in Origin, and that's not to be, you can't be surprised by that, guys. I mean, they are based in the Leopards region, and I mean, there's a lot of talent in the Northwest province in terms of the rugby, make no mistake, but most of that talent ends up going to some of the bigger regional schools. So that's the one area that let them down. But everything else, guys, they scored. They were in the green level, right? In terms of the history, in terms of the coaching level, 2021 performance, they finished 4th. So 853.88 points. According to this algorithm, they should finish 3rd. In terms of the team, Andre Pretorius, one of my favorite players to watch when I was growing up. Great to see him doing great things as a coach as well. Captain will be Figures. It must be. Okay, someone correct me. Someone sent me a voice note and correct me, but I think it was the latter. Player to watch, Hans Bertram. New players that are coming, 20 players and 22 returning players. I mean, obviously that adds to the experience score. Another team I think could be dark horses this year, guys. They've got some exciting players there. Then second, should be no surprise, University of Pretoria, nicknamed TUKS, located in Pretoria. Catchment areas of Bulls, 53,000 students in total, 4 championships, making them one of the most successful teams in the tournament. Won the tournament 2012-13, then 17, and obviously last year as well. 1 SA Schools player this year. Scoring, 2 areas where they lacked was Origin. Now, obviously, the Bulls is a small catchment area, relatively speaking. But there's a lot of quality over there. But, they recruit from all over the country, which is obviously why that's a pretty low score. Experience, this is, if there's a team that's been absolutely devastated by player losses, it's definitely been the TUKS. Stone lost in terms of experience, but continuity coach, school attended, they recruit from great schools. Coaching tenure was up there. Table history and cup history, obviously great. 2nd place on there. And then 2021 performance, they finished 3rd on the table, obviously, but went on to win the competition. So in terms of the team, Nico Lees is the coach. Just a matter of time before he makes a step up, right, guys? I mean, he's been a fantastic servant to the varsity and a very, very highly respected coach. I just think it's just a matter of time before he goes on to coach at a higher level. Captaining this year will be Lincoln Daniels. For me, the player to watch is Clyde Lewis. He can play in the back 3 and play as a scrum half. Very exciting prospect, but take a look at that, guys. 38 new players and 17 returning players. There's going to be a lot of work to be done. But just remember, in terms of those 38 new players, there's a hell of a lot of talent over there as well. So, first player should be no surprise, University of Stellenbosch, also known as Madibaz, located in Stellenbosch, obviously. Catchment area, Boland and Western Province, 29,000 students, leading the overall table championships, 5 of them. 2008, 9 and 10, first 3 editions they won, then went through a bit of a barren patch, which shocked a lot of people. Then won 2 back-to-backs, 2018-19. My opinion, I think they would have taken 2020 as well. 3 SA Schools players, as always, have a lot of quality in abundance, an historically great rugby program in terms of the South African university scene. Scoring, school, they came first. Recruit from very high profile schools, table history and cup history obviously as well. A lot of pedigree over there. 2021 performance, they finished 2nd in the table. Just the one area that they were lacking a little bit in terms of the scoring was obviously the experience factor. But these top universities are going to lose a lot of players to the unions. So the team, the coach is Norman Jordan, new coach, was assistant coach before. Obviously highly rated within Stellenbosch circles, taking the mantle. He was a very underrated scrum half, guys. We just had a lot of scrum halves back in the day that were extremely high quality. And I think if he was playing today, he would definitely be in the Springbok mix. A lot of the youngsters might not have heard of him, but he was definitely very underrated scrummy. Captain will be Adrian van der Bank. Had put in some solid performances last year. Definitely keen to see him this year. Should make quite a big difference to the Marties this year. Played with a lot of heart and gusto last year. So I think that's definitely, these are the qualities you look for in terms of a leader, right? Key player or player to watch, I would say keep an eye on Gift Lamini. I loved watching him play last year. This guy's got a lot of moxie, a lot of spirit. I think I'm just very disappointed none of the major unions picked him up, or maybe he just chose to continue studying. I'm not 100% sure, but just keep an eye on him. He should be playing at senior level already, guys. I really rate this guy. Anyway, so here we go. And if this proves to be wrong, and I get similar results to next year, then we just know that I'm cursed, man. Because I'm trying a completely different approach. But if any of these teams end up in the bottom three, then it's just like I've got no clue what to do. Seriously, it's crazy. But again, I think that's why I'm becoming more and more interested in Varsity Cup rugby, because of the dynamic. It's so interchangeable. Okay, so obviously the first semi-final would be between Marties and UCT. Marties finishing first and UCT fourth. Another one would be between TUKS and Northwest University with a second and third finish. Okay, so Marties versus UCT. Obviously, the home ground advantage, I don't know how important that'll be, to be honest with you, because I'm not sure about the QF restrictions and all the rest of that that'll be in place, right? So if there are no restrictions in place and full attendance was allowed, you'd have to go with Marties immediately. That crowd is something else. They really get behind their boys. But Cape Town's very close, so that might nullify it a little bit. Marty's obviously historically great program and have a pedigree. They're winners. They know how to win. They're obviously the most successful varsity in the competition historically. But what I reckon will happen in terms of Marty's versus UCT, I think Tom Dawson's squib has grown. I think he's a highly underrated coach, and I think he's going to go all the way as a coach. Norman Jordan in his first year, a lot of inexperienced players coming back. So I'm going to say UCT will cause an upset. I think the Rossi in last year's final burnt him, but this is a highly intelligent coach, guys. Very high rugby IQ, and I think the loss in last year's final would have burnt him, and I think he would definitely make gentle tweaks strategically that would allow UCT to overcome any competition in terms of Marties over there. So that would be very interesting. TUKS versus Northwest University, I would predict a very tight game. TUKS very inexperienced in terms of all the new players coming in. Northwest University obviously got a very structured coaching team in place, got a strong leadership group and all the rest of it. But for me, home ground advantage, I would give it to TUKS. Again, I think it'll be a very tight game, so I do predict a final exactly the same as last year. And I think at the end of the day, I don't want to keep this video going on for too long, but I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go with UCT. And the reason for that is I think, again, Dawson Squibb as a coach is definitely going to have learned from his mistakes. I think they've got a lot more continuity going for them than TUKS. What I see in the TUKS program right now is a program that is up there with the best in the country. Don't get me wrong, very talented athletes there, but I see this as a rebuilding phase for them. Unfortunately, they've lost so many players to the unions, guys. Whereas UCT they've been badly affected by that, but not as badly affected by that. So that's why my prediction would be that UCT would upset the apple cart and they would actually win the tournament. And if they finish 9th or 10th, I might just have to retire from YouTube. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch this. I think, personal opinion, I think Saru introducing URC, Curry Cup, under 19, under 20, under 21, all of these different competitions, I think I'll do a video on it sometime, or I might write an article on it. I think it's basically to take to stave off interest from overseas clubs, because it's basically saying, if you only got an under 20 or under 21 competition, the under 19s might not start every game. They might get itchy feet. They might be looking at opportunities. But now with all these competitions at play, it's stretching the limit in terms of the South African the player pool. I mean, you got guys that basically had varsity contracts all of a sudden be signed to unions because the unions needed that depth. I mean, you're going to have 3 youth tournaments going on, and the Currie Cup and the URC. So the tournament that suffered most highly from this has been the Varsity Cup, and I think the Varsity Cup, to me personally, has brought through more talent, relatively speaking, than and it's a better product than any of those youth competitions. And I will definitely be doing a video on that. I think the Varsity Cup should be the premier youth rugby competition in South Africa. I think that's where the energy should be focused on. There's a commercial model there that's viable that I don't see in other competitions. The other competitions, I just see it as a chance for a young guy to put on a Bulls jersey and pose for it and say one day that he played for the Bulls at one stage, But in terms of the pathway, take a look at the quality of the coaches over here. Take a look at the quality of the competition. I mean, you got young guns as well, guys. I don't want to rant on too much about it, but it's I think all of these competitions are strategic mistake, and I think that strategic mistake has meant that the Varsity Cup has suffered greatly. I mean, when you take a look at TUKS's losses and the new players they have to breed into the system, it's scary. It's going to be a long slog ahead, not only for them, but for all the teams. And sometimes I just worry about the future of this competition, which is, of course, the greatest varsity competition on planet Earth. And no one can argue with that. Anyway, guys, have a fantastic week further. And thanks for staying with me for so long. Cheers. Bye.